How you guys feeling? All right. How you guys feeling? Ah, that's a hip hop thing too. Call and response. So it's beautiful to be back here with you guys. Last time was really, personally, super rewarding for me. Poor kid from New Jersey. Never thought I'd be on the other side of the fucking planet talking about my lifestyle. And never knew that people on the other side of the world would have any kind of interest in my lifestyle. So before we even get started, I just want to thank you guys. Thank the University of Groningen, SG, Nina, Jesse, the whole staff at Vera. This is legacy shit for me, so really, really appreciative of the opportunity. So, show of hands, how many people were here last time? Holy shit. All right, so, I thought long and hard about how I wanted to go about this. I'm like, all right, we're just gonna go in sequence. We'll do one part, and we'll do another part, and then we'll do another part. But I live on the other side of the rock, and it's been a minute since we've been together. So I thought maybe we could dig back in right where we started, but kind of touch on the early stuff to set the tone, set the context. Context is everything, right? This is an academic situation. And without knowing 2 + 2, geometry is a waste of time, right? So let's start again from the top. So we got some key questions to ask and answer. How do we define hip hop? And why is it more than just a musical genre? Can anybody tell me that? Somebody? Why is it important for us to talk about this? Yes, sir.
Culture?
Because it's culture. Meaning, all of us come from different cultures. The biggest trick that the colonizer pulled on all of us is the idea that there's more than one race. There's only one race. It's the human race. We get broken down into ethnicities and compartments and different styles and dialects and languages, genders, but there's only one race. And what we're talking about is culture. And every culture that we come across brings a particular dynamic to the table. Fair? Hip hop, as a culture, has affected the entire world. And I want to show you the foundation that it stands on. Sometimes when you're doing a hip hop lecture, there was one lady in one of my classes in the States, she's like, when are we going to do the dancing? I saw these girls and they're doing this stuff. It's down the road. Take your time. 2 + 2 is 4 first. What are the origins of hip hop? And who are its originators? There's arguments for that, right? There's people in California that'll tell you, well, yeah, they say all this stuff about Kool Herc and Afrika Bambaataa, but we got our guys too. I'm personally from New Jersey. There was a Grandmaster Flash, there was an Afrika Bambaataa, there was a Kool Herc, there's a Rocksteady crew, there's a whole bunch of ill graffiti writers, and there's people that are the age of the pioneers as we know them from my neighborhood that think that they're getting cheated. But for argument's sake, we're going to start the dialogue from the space of history that we all know, which is New York City. Fair? And we'll get into the people. Why is hip hop and the culture it produces meaningful in American society and politics today? So there's a saying at home, everybody want to be black till it's time to be black. Can imitate the style, the language, the dialect, the movements, but when the police come, done with that rap shit, we're gonna explore that too. I'm so old school. What does that term mean? I'm so old school. You hear people say old school, it's like this romanticized term, right? People who are born in the 70s, 80s, 90s, they got a particular language for it. People who are born before us think we don't know shit. So, with generations come knowledge, with generations come experience, with generations come life experiences and world occurrences that change things. For some of our grandparents, it was World War I, World War II. For other people, it was the Industrial Revolution. For some people, it was the onset of television and other technologies, mass production, and all that. But for me, it was hip hop, personally. So, what we're looking at here is an aerial view of the Bronx, New York. We'll show you a few of those. That's the old Yankee Stadium down there before they tore it down. There's the new Yankee Stadium. And the Bronx contains one of the 5 poorest congressional districts in the United States of America. You go across any country, there's a part of the country that has all the money and puts all the people in politics and all the people in commerce. And then there's places where people don't have any money and people don't have any access to those things. And that's usually where the most creative people are. Because if you don't have access to the channels that are corporate, or if you don't have access to the channels that are moneyed, you gotta make your own shit, right? We can start that with the indigenous people of Africa, the indigenous people of the United States, the indigenous people of the West Indies, the indigenous people of South America. Everybody here knows what the Dutch East India Trading Company is, right? That's another lecture. I just wanted to make sure. Just checking on your ass. So, the areas of the Bronx: Riverdale, Fieldston, Spuyten Duyvil, Pelham Bay, Schuylerville, Pelham Gardens, and Morris Park. So, the Bronx, New York is the only landlocked borough. There's 5 boroughs in New York: Brooklyn, Queens, Manhattan, Staten Island, and the Bronx. The Bronx. It's the only borough that starts with a the. Why is that? Anybody? Any idea why? It's every other borough just has a name, but the Bronx is the Bronx. It's because of the Bronx family. Philip Bronx, a Dutchman, was the founder of the Bronx. These are the beginnings of the Dutch relationship with New York City. Harlem, as you know it here, has 2 A's. Harlem, as I know it, has 1. But it came from the Harlem that has 2. So, it's one of the first Dutch colonies in the New World. Pretty interesting. Each of the founding fathers of the culture took up a particular section of the Bronx. You had Kool Herc on Sedgwick Avenue, Africa Bambaataa and Bronx River, Grandmaster Flash in his area, Grand Wizard Theodore in his area, and all the other pioneering fathers taking up particular segments of the Bronx. And the reason that's important is because those names represent what we know as the founding fathers of the culture, and each of them bring a different dynamic to the game. Even if they're DJ for DJ, one of them represents one style, another one of them brings another style to the table, another brings another, and then you have the B-boys and the B-girls, which bring the physical element to the table, and then you have the graffiti writers and the visual artists, which bring another dynamic to the table, and the MCs, which bring what we know today as hip-hop, which is led by the rapper. There was a time when the rapper was just the person that kept the room engaged. The music led the way. Very, very, very important to note that. So the South Bronx, beautiful landscape you saw in those other pictures there, right? But had a sharp decline in population at a point in the 50s and the 60s. Some of that had to do with livable housing, some of that had to do with the quality of life. By the 1980s, there was films like Fort Apache, The Bronx, The Taking of Pelham 123. These films depicted the Bronx that represents the Bronx where hip-hop was born. Fair? Does that make sense? It was born in a depleted place. It wasn't born in a place where people had a lot of money and a lot of opportunity. It was a space of creativity and a space of high risk, high danger, just leaving your house. To have fun took a lot of imagination, a hell of a lot of imagination, enough imagination that we're all fascinated and or involved in the culture here in the 21st century. So, there's a book by a man by the name of Robert Caro called The Power Broker. And he's talking about the building of the Cross Bronx Expressway. And the Cross Bronx Expressway decimated the existing residential neighborhoods, mom and pop businesses, and was a catalyst for what is known as white flight. Can anyone define white flight for me? Does anyone have any idea what that means? So, when you hear American scholars talk about white flight, what they mean is that at some point, this area was highly populated by a large white population. Something happened that caused those people to believe it's time for us to get the fuck out of here. This is bad. We gotta go. In order to fly, in order to be an immigrant, you have to have been given free passage, right? Vast majority of the brown folks in the United States are not immigrants. They were brought there by force in order to build the new world. So, at the turn of the 20th century, but prior to the turn of the 20th century, as we all know, America was built on the slave trade. Fair? Without going hyper deep into it, it's fair to say that 90% of the colonial world was built on free labor. And that free labor was provided by brown people, women, and white indentured servants. There's a huge difference between an indentured servant and a slave. In time, an indentured servant is given his freedoms. And when he steps outside of the slavery line, he's just as free as the richest white man. In the Bronx, the white flight in the Bronx began at the building of the Cross Bronx Expressway. The Cross Bronx Expressway was a highway designed to bring the money from New England through the Bronx and through Manhattan as quickly as possible to the Wall Street district. That's the rationale for the building of the Cross Bronx Expressway. It was built by a man by the name of Robert Moses. Robert Moses is widely known as the king of architecture. Not only did he build the Cross Bronx Expressway, but he's responsible for the housing projects. You hear rappers talking about in the projects. I grew up in the projects. It was rough, right? And you think about the projects and you think, oh yeah, that's just poor people there. Well, the city doesn't give a fuck about them. And you're kind of right. The city doesn't give a fuck about them, but the contradiction in that is that the housing projects are the cash cow of the city. It's where the money is. Stack them up, live them cheap, minimum maintenance, minimum energy given toward new programming, after school programs, things like that. But that rent is flowing. It's guaranteed. Poor people need someplace to be. The people with money can come and go, right? They can fly. Hence the white flight term, right? So that paints the difference between people who are living in the housing projects and people who have the opportunity to come to and fro as they see fit. So the people who are in the housing projects are stuck. That money don't stop. It's bottomless. The city of New York makes more money off of a grandmother living on the 18th floor of a shitty housing project in Brooklyn than they do a guy that buys a $3 million condo on Park Avenue. He's going to be out of there. As soon as the $4 million condo is built and his man buys it a state away, then it's a dick size contest between those guys. Oh, you bought a $4 million condo? Well, I worked the same job. You work for me. You bought a $4 million house? Well, shit, mine's going to be 4.3. You go to the United Arab Emirates, it's the same thing, right? Oh, this sheik built a 105-floor building, and the edges of each floor is lined in pewter. The next guy's like, well, mine's going to be 107. I'm going to line mine in gold, silver, pewter, and there's going to be naked girls hanging off the side of the building. Because I got more money than you, and I'm better than you. When you think about the competition narrative in hip-hop, it's an imitation of wealth competition. But the wealth is here and here, not in the bank. Again, just trying to paint context. I want to paint a picture for where these things that we came to talk about comes from. So if you look at these pictures, it looks beautiful, right? Nice city, big old department stores, people chilling. Not for long. I want to play for you a segment of Rubble Kings. There's a section in this film where they talk about Robert Moses. Backs up what I said.
The Bronx was like a world of its own.
In the early 70s, man, crime was like the major income of the Bronx.
In the Bronx, it was a deep-rooted gang culture.
There were gangs literally in every corner. The violence was everywhere. You could feel the tension in the air. You could see the fights across the street. You could hear the shouts in the nighttime. It was that fateful day that I sent him to bring peace.
That was one of the worst days in South Bronx history. The word on the street was that he was trying to make peace, and he was murdered trying to make peace. And basically after that, the South Bronx Floyd Patchy was out of control. They were running through the streets, they were burning everything. Pandemonium hit.
I put out a bulletin and I started calling all the Ghetto Brothers.
Charlie wanted to get the Ghetto Brothers to mobilize for the biggest bloodbath in the history of New York.
We lost a member, but they viciously murdered him out there in the street. Now it's an eye for an eye.
The Bronx was going to be bathed in blood.
Bathed in blood. Hip-hop as we love it came from this.
How news spread. There was not a gang in the whole of New York that was not aware of what's happening.
And it was like the movie of the Warriors when the ladies on the radio talking about, hey, boppers, you got to make that move.
Let's get down to it, boppers. We're going to have to do better out there.
Everybody was tense because nobody knew what was going to jump off.
Remember that scene from the Warriors, Can You Dig It? That really went down. That really happened.
Can you dig it? Can you dig it?
We moved up to the South Bronx in 1963 from Greenwich Village To the South Bronx, it was a completely different world. Buildings were beautiful, very spacious, the blocks were wide. There were still Jews living at the time, pockets of Italians and Irish still living in the community. The South Bronx at the time was fantastic. It was just a completely different world. It was a world of discovery. In those days, I didn't like the idea of joining a gang. I started my own thing. When I started the Ghetto Brothers, originally it wasn't supposed to be a gang. It wasn't supposed to be an organization. It was a brother thing. It was basically my brothers and I. We lived in Manhattan. We moved to the Bronx, and those days it was the ghetto. So we were Ghetto Brothers. Who were Ghetto Brothers? Robin, Benji, Victor. Those were the Ghetto Brothers. My brothers.
That's your playground?
Okay, then later on, since I knew a lot of the kids in the community, I was very friendly, I was amicable, everybody got along with me. So I said, let's expand this. I met Charlie in 150th Street, Trinity Avenue. I was with my friend Raymond. He's like a brother, we grew up together. And I saw this guy taking a wood this thick and going, it's breaking. And I said, wow, I found that amazing. Because I was into the martial arts. And I said, that is fantastic. I told Raymond, I want to make friends with him. That was me. I want to make friends with this guy. I woke up there and I said, hi, my name is Benji.
It's 1960 something. I only know they rob, they steal. Nobody's gonna rob me. So I prepare. I'm ready to take this guy on.
I just want to shake your hand. That's Charlie.
I said, okay. The moment he moves, his ass is mine. But he's standing there with his hand out, and he starts telling me about there's a few guys that study martial arts that he's been watching, and he can imagine that I'm a pretty good martial artist.
And we sat down. He said, what's your style? I said, I'm Goju. Talk to me. And we just talked and talked and talked.
I stick out my hand. I put my hand in his, and the Ghetto Brothers are one.
The 60s were a time of worldwide social and cultural reckoning, with movements demanding change spreading across the college campuses and the front lines of America's ghettos. It truly felt like the seeds for a full-blown revolution were being sown.
Remember, the Bronx is dirt poor, one of the 5 poorest congressional districts in the country.
So we thought this revolution was going to happen. We knew that this was the end of the world order. We thought revolution was possible. For the first time, we had a multicultural movement. For me, it reconfirmed, in a strange way, my faith in America.
But as the 60s came to a close, the Vietnam War and racism continued to erode America's soul and fade all optimism. A systematic backlash against organizations like the Black Panthers, coupled with the assassinations of nearly every iconic figure of hope, left a new generation with nothing more than unfocused rage.
They killed the king, and then they killed Kennedy. My heroes died in the 60s.
The hope is deflated. I was so mad at America. I was pissed.
Heard of the troubled 60s? Well, the troubled 60s give rise to the violent 70s.
I have a dream. No, you don't. My people, we will overcome. Boom. No, you're not gonna overcome. You ain't getting nobody out of this fucking ghetto. Remember the 60s? Hey, peace. Now it was peace.
Context is vital.
America's unrest was reflected locally as New York City struggled under the weight of its own mounting crises. A failed vision of urban renewal pushed all but the city's wealthiest to the brink, and a new pessimism and desperation made its home in its streets.
Now here was this great city, the international capital of commerce and culture and communications and finance, and it was on its knees asking, begging for help. The city was on the edge of bankruptcy.
All through the 70s, remember, industries were departing, jobs were disappearing. If there was a safety net before, the federal government was basically not just ceasing to protect it, but cutting holes in it.
Imagine, New York City. It's fucking New York City, man.
Despite the city's financial troubles, in 1970, New York's cultural scene was as vibrant as ever. Construction of the World Trade Center would soon be complete, and the New York Knicks would win their first championship. However, only 4 miles away, due to reckless urban planning, the district of the South Bronx was rapidly becoming a symbol of urban decay around the world.
When we were young, we remember Robert Moses. I remember the teacher talked about a guy who was fixing up the area. That they were saying they were renovating the area. Buildings are being taken out of commission. Hey, gotta go. We're gonna build this highway over here. The South Bronx Express at one time, that whole area was nothing but houses. Beautiful houses.
He takes a wonderful borough that's made up of polyglot. I mean, everybody was there. Ralph Lauren comes from there. And he cuts a huge swath, literally destroying the neighborhood.
This is amazing. I mean, it's amazingly creative, even though it was also humanly destructive, that he thought the shortest distance between 2 points is a line, even if there are houses and people, in the way of the line.
And that's when things started to go down. The economy went with them, the store owners, everybody just took off.
You see a quiet white flight. So everybody was migrating, from the concourse up to, Nyack, White Plains. Come on up, Pops, come on up. You can't stay down here no more,
The rich move out to their second and third homes. The middle class is not far behind. And left will be the poor, who require enormous services and who will suffer.
Does that make sense? Now that you hear some people that make a hell of a lot more money than me saying it? Bronx was fucked up after the Cross-Bronx Expressway was built. And this is the place in which the culture that we're here to talk about was born. Again, takes an enormous amount of wherewithal, takes an enormous amount of toughness. Landlords, people who own the buildings, it was cheaper for them to set the building on fire when the building is at 50% occupancy and only 30% of them are still paying. It's cheaper for him to set it on fire and get the insurance money than it is for him to fix it up for the people who are still there. Fuck humanitarianism. Give me my bread. Let me get the fuck out of here. And what's left is a place where the culture that we're here to talk about is born. It's very, very, very important that that context is understood, because most makers that we know from that time period come from tough places. Very seldom is somebody sitting on cushy chairs with 3 square meals a day doing extremely creative things with nothing. They may use their money to put them in positions to do creative, advanced things. But this culture comes from people's minds and people's hearts and a need to fill a void that's not being provided by the city that they live in, with after-school programs, with things for your parents to invest themselves in that can help your life as you grow up as a child. And there we enter all the gang culture. 90% of kids who are in a gang because they don't feel like they belong to something. And these tough guys around their way are like, man, come with me, man, I got you. Oh, that's a bully is messing with you? Knock him out, come with me, man. If you stay with me, you'll be good. And then get the kid in there. No, oh, by the way, now I need you to rob him. You want to maintain my services and protection? Well, then you got to be able to do what I do. Because if you can't fight and you're not willing to do what I do, I really don't have any time for you. I might rob you. And here comes the truth behind a great deal of tough guys and girls. All right? Gang culture starts there. So he builds the Cross Bronx Expressway, and it's the form in which hip-hop we know it is birthed. And in the wake of the building the Cross Bronx Expressway, the construction ripped apart a once vibrant community. In the 1970s, the Bronx was plagued by a wave of arsons. The burning of buildings was predominantly in the poorest communities, such as the South Bronx. One explanation of what occurred was that landlords decided to burn their low property value buildings to take the insurance money, as it was more lucrative to get insurance money than to refurbish or sell a building in such severely distressed form. Became identified with burned out buildings, poverty, and unemployment. Out of 289 census tracts in the Bronx borough, 7 tracts lost more than 97% of their buildings. A tract is an area. When I say 7 tracts in the Bronx, that's T-R-A-C-T. 7 tracts in the Bronx lost 97% of their buildings to landlord arson. What is a family who works at regular, who knows what kind of jobs they have, and their kids got to go to school in this area? What do you do? How do you maintain that? What do you do for fun? There's no fucking fun. It's survival. Again, that's why hip-hop is so vibrant, because it comes from a space of people who are reliant on survival. It's why it was so creative. Now here comes a little bit of fun. The breaks. Can anybody define for me in musical terms, what's a break? Don't worry, I got the answer. The break in any song is the section of the song where the entire band stops playing, except the drummer, the percussionist, if there's one, and maybe the bass player, the rhythm section of the band. Any song you listen to, almost, particularly if it's written in American songwriting dynamic, A section, B section, C section. A section, B section, C section, break. More often than not, that section of the song is 4 bars long, 8 bars long, 12 bars long. For the non-musically inclined, a bar is a 4 count. 1, 2, 3, bar. 2, 2, 3, bar. 3, 2, 3, bar. So when I speak of a break being broken down like that, I just counted off 3 bars. You see how short that is? It's just a little section where everybody in the band gets to relax and the drummers get to show off, right? This building is 1520 Sedgwick Avenue. 1520 Sedgwick Avenue in 1987 was recognized by the New York Historical Society as a national landmark, as the birthplace of hip hop in the United States of America. And the reason that is because of these 2 gentlemen right here. Can anybody tell me who the man on the right is? That is DJ Kool Herc, government name Clive Campbell. His family is from Kingston, Jamaica. He moved to the United States when he was 12 years old. Coming from Kingston, Jamaica, Clive Campbell already had a great deal of musical influences, particularly Jamaican sound system culture. Another huge dynamic in the culture, because in Jamaica, sound system culture was based on groups of people that had a DJ, a sound system, and what's known in Jamaica as a toaster. What we know as a rapper or an MC. The guy who keeps the room engaged. Oh, the party's over here. Is the party over here? Oh no, the party's over there. Where are all the fly girls at? Who's from Kingston? Who's from Spanish Town? The toaster. He keeps the room engaged, right? So imagine, this gentleman at 12 moves to the Bronx. And when he moves to the Bronx, he brings all of that dynamic with him. And he has his own sound system. And he starts to throw parties in the rec center of his building. We'll get back to that. The guy to his right, his name is Kool Herc. Kool Herc is largely known as the first American MC. So, as a young kid, when Herc is throwing these events, he's the DJ and the toaster. The reason we brought up the breaks first is because the DJ style that Herc brought to the table was the notion of extending the break. Meaning, I got a song with a 4-bar break on it. I got 2 turntables and an apparatus in the middle called a mixer. So I'm going to take that 4 bars and now I'm going to turn it into 32. By playing that break, start the break over, start the break over, start the break over. When you hear the term breakdancing or B-boys or B-girls, it is because inside the break of the song is where you show where you have power. This is where you do your thing. That's a very involved technique. You got headphones on, the record is playing, you're setting up the next record, starting it again. Switch the headphones, reset, start it again. How the hell you gonna be on a microphone doing that shit? So Herc says to his man, yo, I'm tired as hell, dog. Can you hold me down? Can you do that part for me? Enter the notion of the MC. MC being short for Master of Ceremonies, because he controls the dynamics of the space. He's the one that says, hey girl, you having a good time? I see you. Yo, my man, that's a nice shirt. Yo, somebody license plate A2135Z, you left your lights on. He's the master of ceremonies. He controls everything. So here comes the relationship that we know, the DJ and the MC, right? Is that a fair space that we all understand with regard to hip hop culture? This is where it was born, with these 2 gentlemen here. This is a flyer. Are there any flyers laying around here? Any advertisements laying around? Actually, forget about that. They're all over the walls. And they're nice, done with machines, and people go to school to make them for us. And we pay them. You think it took a fucking degree to make this shit? I think not. How about not only was it happening in the Bronx with these guys, but a side parallel, it also has relatively to the punk community. Because punk rockers were doing the same exact thing. The difference between the hip hop community and the punk community is kids that were doing punk rock were rebelling against their wealthy, square, stiff-ass parents. But they go to their dad's job and Xerox off their flyers. It's a fucking double-edged sword. Everybody's in bed with the devil. Show me your fucking halo. A DJ Kool Herc party. Back to school jam. The place, 1520 Sedgwick Avenue in the rec room. August 11th, 1973. 9 p.m. to 4 a.m. Can you imagine partying in the rec room of your building till 4 a.m. with your mama right there? You wouldn't get away with that bullshit you get away with now, would you? Admission, 25 cents for the ladies. Shit. With a little heart piece. So you know everybody was trying to You know? Your auntie is over there, but you know, when Lisa comes to the party, you're in this corner of the rec room like, given by Kool Herc. School's still out. Just in case you didn't know. It's a fucking flyer, right? All the promotional materials we get that turn us on to the things that we might or might not want to do. This is how the information is given to us. Okay, well, welcome to the mother of that. In hip-hop and punk rock. Both have parallel stories. One comes from poor folks, one comes from folks with at least a little bit more means. Even if that means only comes from the color of their skin. Again, that's another lecture. Special guests, Coco, Cindy Campbell, Herc's sister, Clark K, and Timmy T. So this is a birthday party for Kool Herc's sister. A birthday party for this guy's sister is now known as the party that kicked off hip-hop as we know it. Because it was at this event that Herc formally announced, I have this style that I want to present to the people. And in that style, it involves me as a DJ having 2 copies of the same record. And every time the record gets to the break, I'm gonna let the break roll. Because man, there's something about when the horns go away and the guitars go away and the keys go away and those fucking drums. God damn, something in them drums, man. Strange thing. Now, Herc is not the most technical DJ in the world, so he's train wrecking mixes all over the place. The whole technique and people building on top of that notion and turning it into a fluid, rolling thing like we see in the club. How many DJs in the place? So you know, dead air is not your friend. Train wrecking mixes is not your friend. All of us got a friend who thinks they're a DJ, and when they mix, it sounds like a pair of boots in a fucking dryer. Time out. We could do this for hours, man. That's pretty fucking funny. So yeah, Herc himself says, you know, this is the place. My sister's party. We've been doing these little rec room parties for a while, but now I want to introduce this thing. I've been working on this thing. Now I'm buying 2 copies of every record, and I'm making that break play longer and longer and longer. And it's funny, you know, when I do that, the black kids that live in my building or that come to the party, they got this particular dance style that they do. It's called top rocking. And when the Puerto Ricans come to the party and they see all the black kids doing the top rocking, they got a thing that they add to it called footwork or floor work. So this is where brown brothers and sisters have come together almost by accident to create a dance style that is performed inside of the break of the record. That is the beginnings of the term break dancing. Break dancer. B-boy. B-girl. The B, short for break. Nice to meet you. It was a back-to-school birthday party for Cindy Campbell in the rec center of 1520 Sedgwick Avenue. And here we are on the other side of the planet, all of us affected by, whether we like it or not, completely affected by this culture. This is a picture of the Chief Rocker Busy Bee, one of the pioneering MCs who paved the way for transitioning the party MC from DJ sidekick to leader of the show. Not only was he engaged in the room and asking you if you were having a good time and telling you throw your hands in the air and wave them like you just don't care, but he starts tying couplets together. Now poetry becomes a dynamic. So you got somebody selecting the music, you got somebody who gets physically busy to the music, and then you got a guy who's doing poetry that falls on the bars. Enter the MC as we know it. And to be fair, this ain't the beginning of rap. We'll get into what that is, but this is where rap becomes a dynamic of the have-nots, and it starts to become a space of pride, as does the dancing, as does the DJing. Because if you can do one of those things, you're getting all the girls, you're getting all the attention, and you are the person that the tough guys and girls in the gangs, they don't want to mess with you because they also come where you are to let their hair down. It ain't tough guy or tough girl time then, right? You see how these things begin to develop this relationship. It starts to become a rainforest, right? The spiders eat the ants. The rain feeds everybody. The animals that can't fight, some of them stay up in the trees. The animals that'll fuck you up, they come out in the dark and they catch you when you're slipping. How many times you call a lion a bad guy for killing a gazelle? Survival of the fit. Everybody want to be logical until it's time to be fucking logical. Most people that will rob you are not a bad person. They're just fucking hungry. More often than not. The toughest of the tough. They ain't had a meal in 2 days, and you look like a steak sandwich. And I know you can't fight, so I'm taking it. If you can fight, I might have to hurt you to get it. It's how these dynamics work. It's just the nature of God's will. Funny how we judge people when they express certain behavior or they have certain affiliations with people that they hang around and things that they do, and we're sitting on our cushy couch passing judgment. Yeah, get yourself a sincere relationship with hunger. I've had sleep for dinner before. It tastes horrible. But back to the program. Chief Rocker Busy B, largely known as the pioneering person who took what Kool Herc did as Kool Herc's partner in keeping the party engaged and put it into poetic stance and began to relate it to the music as well as the room. The Kool Brothers, an American hip-hop group formed in 1978 in the Bronx, New York City, especially known for their memorable routines, which included harmonies, melodies, and stage-stomping performances. The Kool Brothers set the standard for MCing after Busy B opened the door and became known as the Rolling Stones of hip-hop. The Kool Brothers still, to this day, perform across the United States. The Funky 4 plus one more, another pioneering Bronx rap group that came shortly after Busy B introduced the idea of rhyming in couplets to the beat. Why is it the Funky 4 plus one more? Because no one had seen a girl toast before. Does that mean it didn't exist? Or there might be a little bit of revisionist history in there. Some people say Sha-Rock wasn't the first. But on a commercial level, the young lady in that picture, her name is MC Sha-Rock. And she is largely known as the first female MC of note. Shit.
If you're ready for this, say you're ready for this. If you're ready for this, say you're ready for this. Are you ready for this? We're ready for this. Are you ready for this? We're ready for this. What we just can't miss. We just can't miss. What we just can't miss. With a beat like this. It's the joint. We're gonna prove to the world that we're for real. We're gonna prove to everybody we know the real deal. We got golden voices and hearts of steel. Because the 5 MCs, it got to be real. We wanna hear the party people yell Sugar Hill. So what's the deal? Sugar Hill. So what's the deal? Sugar Hill. Ooh, that's the joint. These words we said we want y'all to hear. We're gonna make a lot some class. We're gonna do our best, we're gonna make it last. We got drums on our minds, we got rockin' in the heart. And now the things we do, you can call it art. We're bad, we're slick, we're doing it hip. We're gonna rock this record.
And don't you forget,
That's the joint. Because Little Ronnie C is the melody. And Keith help me rock, we sing in harmony. Because Jeff is the rhythm, and Kate is the bass.
Shop, rock, shucking the whole darn place.
And now here's a little story you got to be told. The party people in the place got a whole lot of soul.
So when we on the mic, y'all shucking the house.
And when we all get together, we can turn it out. Now we're in the house, as you can plainly see. Everybody say, get funky, and make money, and you don't stop. Give it to us now.
Sound like one person, right? That's 5 people working in unison. You hear about it in R&B groups. You hear about it in rock groups. You hear about it in jazz. The hip hop, that's just primitive stuff, right? Pretty harmonious, pretty sonically clear, no cacophony. 5 people finishing 4 to 8 to 12 bars at a time. This is the introduction to rap as we know it. This is a picture of DJ Kool Herc and the one and only legendary DJ Red Alert. DJ Red Alert is also from the Bronx, but Red Alert was a successful downtown club DJ. He wasn't playing block parties and block jams like Herc and Bambaataa and Jazzy J and these guys. Red was downtown, and he becomes a major factor in this entire discussion. He's also, for those of us who do know something about rap music, Red Alert is uncle to Mike G of the Jungle Brothers. And he is also the foundation of what we all know as the Native Tongue Movement. Grand Wizard Theodore, a Bronx DJ steeped in the early days of hip hop, and he was a DJ for a group called the Fantastic Five. Interesting piece of random trivia about this brother is he is largely noted as the man who invented the scratch. You all hear about scratching in DJing. If we either do it, or we've heard about it, or we've heard it and experienced it. Fair? Everyone has a relationship with the notion of scratching. So the story, the fable is, he's in his bedroom, DJing, practicing, and his mom comes in the room, and he stops the record and pulls it back. And he's like, holy shit. The what? The what? Fuck! This thing is an instrument. The introduction to turntablism, or to DJs being considered viable in a conversation about musicianship. Started from a kid practicing DJing in his bedroom. His mom comes in, hey, turn that noise down. Sorry, Mom. Holy shit. Africa Bambaataa. Like 2 minutes? Africa Bambaataa, in the Bronx, he controlled the area called Bronx River. He was also the leader of the Black Spades, the largest, most dangerous street gang in the city of New York at the time. He was born Lance Samuels. They called him Kevin in the street. Strange, but true. And Bam was not only a notorious gang leader and enforcer, but he was also known as the master of records. So Kool Herc brought the notion of the break to the table. Bam was notorious for his eclectic taste. His family is from the West Indies. He was raised on Garveyism. He had a taste for punk rock, jazz, soca, merengue, salsa, batucada, santeria. He brought all these musical dynamics to the table and is largely notorious for the Puerto Rican element of b-boying being footwork, being enhanced over the years because of his taste in world music. So you got Herc's toolbox, you have what Grand Wizard Theodore brought to the table, and then you have Bambaataa with this wide-ranging taste and the power of leading a gang. Funny thing about him leading the gang, as a gang leader, he writes an essay for an essay contest. The fuck is that? The winner of the essay contest was supposed to go to India. That gets changed somehow along the way, and they end up being sent to Africa. He wins the essay contest, goes to Africa, in the same window of time, sees the movie Shaka Zulu, and has an epiphany. Man, I'm misusing my power. If I can put all these guys together to fight for turf that we don't own, I could also put them together to protect us from the people that do own it, that are afraid of us. And this is the beginnings of him going from leader of the Black Spades to the founder of what we know as the Universal Zulu Nation, an organization founded on peace, unity, love, and having fun. Let's take a break. So, to everyone who was here at the first lecture, I want to thank you for your patience in allowing me to go through that space of the point again. I feel like it's important to drive the context, you know? And I don't want to be repetitive. I didn't come here to do the same lecture twice, to be 100% clear. But I do think that as the students that we all are, a review is always important, right? So until we get that foundation understood, the things that we talk about the culture that we know and the exciting things that begin to happen in the 80s and in the 90s and coming into the current day, without the foundation, it's kind of empty. I'm just barking names and people, and you can reference it, but until you can take it back to the root, maybe you don't know why the MCs that you like sound the way they sound, or the DJs that you like display the technique that they display, or how, once it went international, how certain countries like the Netherlands, who's very steeped in hip hop in particular components, have the style that they have. So thank you to everyone who was here the first time around for allowing me to revisit that and kind of flush that back out, yeah? A quick thing about gang culture. These jackets, obviously they represent affiliation. Obviously they represent what group you're tied to and what that group represents. These jackets are called cuts. The reason they're called cuts is because more often than not, the sleeves are gone. Excuse me. That was a high representation of the fact that I'm tied to some fucking tough dudes and don't give me no problems. The back, the names and the way they're situated, it's almost like sports teams, right? Same dynamic. Same reason why you go to watch a game and your sports team has a particular logo or lettering style. Strangely enough, part of that, post the 70s, is borrowed from that. And today, most of the time when we talk about cuts culture, we're talking about biker gangs. Biker gangs have carried this tradition forward. Most biker gangs are not people of color. Interesting how things get borrowed that don't get spoken on. Here's a picture of a young man from the Black Spades at the meeting where Benji, who they were talking about, and the Rubble Kings who got killed, this was the meeting prior to that. I just showed you some cuts, some official cuts. The Black Spades is written on the actual denim rather than having the material cut out and sewn onto the jacket. Why? Because the majority of the kids who were in the Black Spades were high school kids at the oldest. These other guys are older, they have more access, they have women in their lives who are doing the seamstress work and things that give them that representation. The Black Spades were kids. And clearly, because they were kids, they were the most reckless and the least organized. Not only in their look, but in their behavior. That's why they were so dangerous. And Bambaataa was the leader of that group. After which, he founded the Universal Zulu Nation and then formed Africa Bambaataa and the Soul Sonic Force that brought us the electro-funk sound and all the vocabulary of upbeat, positive dance music, also related to punk rock because it introduces the use of drum machines very much the same way punk rock bands were doing it at the time. That's a rabbit hole. There's a little bit of paraphrasing here and there in this, but that's a whole other lecture. So the Universal Zulu Nation was first known as the Bronx River Organization and positioned as an alternative to the Black Spades. The Universal Zulu Nation was founded by Bambaataa on November 12th, 1973. Modeled after the Black Panthers, Garvey's Universal Negro Improvement Association, the UNIA, and the Nation of Islam, the mighty Universal Zulu Nation was founded to foster a vision of peace, unity, love, and having fun. The polar opposite of the definition of gang culture. All from writing an essay, going to Africa, seeing a movie, and saying, I am doing this shit all wrong. Amazing where we find our revelations, yeah? In the beginning of the Universal Zulu Nation, the B-boys in the group were known as the Zulu Kings. Eventually, the Zulu Kings became the muscle or the enforcers of the Universal Zulu Nation. And then we move on to this cat. This is a brother by the name of Joseph Sadler, better known to all of us as Grandmaster Flash, the leader of Grandmaster Flash and the Furious Five. His family's from Barbados. He was born in Barbados. When his family immigrated to the United States, they set roots down in the Bronx. Flash attended Samuel Gompers High School, a vocational public school. Vocational school meaning it's a school based on trades. Schools where you can learn electrician work, school where you can learn plumbing, woodwork. So Flash, by his education, is a science guy. He's an electronics guy. Strange enough. Don't hear that talked about very much. And that's where he learned to repair electronic equipment. As a child, he was fascinated by his father's record collection. And in an interview, he reflected, my father was a very heavy record collector, and he still thinks that he has a stronger record collection than me. To show you an example, this is a clip from the film Wild Style. Wild Style is largely known as the first film to display the culture in its entirety. You get a presentation of B-boys and B-girls, DJs, MCs, graffiti writers, and the environment that they grew up in and the day-to-day things that they go through. It's largely noted as the first film that exposes the world to the interior workings of these dynamics that are going on in the Bronx. And this scene, you have Fab Five Freddy watching Flash do what he does. And there's a little intro section, and then we get to the DJing. Shit. graffiti writers getting up on trains was a way that you could become all city. You live in the Bronx and you get up on a train in the train yard, and that train has to go all the way to the depths of Queens. You might not have the money to get to Queens, but if your art gets there, now you're all city.
I'm a warrior, my art is my sword, a place in society
This
is
is
my
Lee
reward,
Quinones.
because the mind is a terrible
Still
thing
alive,
to waste.
still an
Success is
extremely
something we
important
all
gallery
want to
artist.
taste. Everyone has talent on this earth, and you can take it or
This
leave
movie
it for what it's
introduced the
worth.
world
No
to
matter
Lee
how
Quinones.
hard things may seem, you've got the potential, fulfill your dream, because we're the future. And
At
it's
the end of the
up to
movie,
us
he's
to
painted
make
this
our home
amphitheater,
great and A+.
and this is where
Let your
all
mind
the
be pure
B-boys and
free to
B-girls
create,
and
use the beat in
MCs
your
and
heart
gangs
and
come
aim to be
together
great.
for this celebration of the end of the gang war. If you have not seen this film, get this in your life. Here comes a display of all the DJ technique I just unpacked for you from those three different gentlemen. Flash displaying every piece of technique I just told you about.
The Grand Master.
1973. Fab Five Freddy, Yo MTV Raps. Scratching. B-boys bringing linoleum to the park. Can't backspin on cement. Opening and closing the crossfader. Cuts. Cutting versus scratching. Cutting is opening and closing the fader. Scratching is just when the fader is held open. Open meaning both records can be heard. World famous Ken Swift. Rocksteady crew. My crew. Crazy Legs. Frosty Freeze. Another break, just introduced another break. Every time he scratches it, he starts it over, because that break is only so long. Staple technique. I don't care if you play house music, drum and bass, EDM. You are cueing in your headphones with these techniques. The birth of DJing as we know it. Not DJing itself, but DJing as we know it. So you're moving the needle back to this top. Lady Pink, top of the food chain, female graffiti writer, and she happens to be Sweatin' Lee. He's using scratching, blending, cutting. Lee is using different forms and different sizes spray caps to get different elements of the visual presentation. German fat caps, crink oil, minis, hydros. Piece is over. Time for the party. From there, look at these dudes. The fucking outfits on these guys. Here you have Grandmaster Flash and the Furious Five, a group formed in 1978, 5 years after Herc's party. These dynamics are happening, and all of a sudden, now there's groups. After Busy Bee and the other MCs that jumped out in front of the DJ, now there's groups. Now we want to perform. Not just a DJ with a guy that talks. Now we are performers. Grandmaster Flash and the Furious Five is made up of Keith Cowboy to the far left, Kid Creole, second from the left, Raheem with the stripes. Hard not to recognize the face of Melly Mel. And Mr. Ness squatting over Grandmaster Flash. Random side trivia, Kid Creole, this brother here was jailed, I think it was 2 years ago. He was working security at a store on 125th Street. They were kids when they made these records. Didn't have his business. There was no such thing as business. This was fun. Here's this man, 60-something years old, working security at a store on 125th Street, and there was a homeless man that was notorious for making homosexual advances towards other men. And Kid Creole stabbed him to death. He's now in prison. Grandmaster Flash and the Furious Five. It's just super random, I know, it's a lot. I'm trying to make this shit current, man. I'm just doing the best I can with what I got, brother. You know, they gave me 3, I'm trying to make 5. Grandmaster Flash and the Furious Five were signed to a record label owned by this pretty young lady. And this pretty young lady is named Sylvia Robinson. Sylvia Robinson was the CEO of a record label called Sugar Hill Records, along with her husband, Joe Robinson. Sylvia Robinson was also a singer and responsible for groups like The Moments, The Intruders, various other artists that performed on Stax and Chess Records in the 60s. And she had a relatively successful recording career for about 10 years, from I think like 1955 to 1965. And then from there, she went into the executive chamber of record labels, and she started Sugar Hill Records with her husband, Joe Robinson. And the very first record that went out on Sugar Hill Records, shit. I can't find the play button. Fair to say everybody knows this record? How many people here think the Sugar Hill Gang was rappers? They were not at all. Big Bang Hank worked in a pizza shop. KG worked in a furniture store. But Sylvia Robinson is a record label executive, so she's scouting. She's not going to the Bronx looking for rappers that are already established and have their name. She's like, I need a fat guy, I need a tall, skinny guy, I need a cute guy, and we're gonna make a group. And we're gonna practice them, and they're gonna get their shit together, and we're gonna sell some fucking records. And that's how the Sugar Hill Gang was formed. Big Bang Hank was managing the Kool Crush brothers at the time. Big Bang Hank goes to Grandmaster Caz, says, hey man, there's this lady that's forming a group and she's asking me if I could rhyme. I told her I know some guys. She said, no, I want you. So do you have any rhymes that I could use? Grandmaster Caz is like, you? All right. Pulls out a notebook of rhymes, tosses Big Bang Hank a rhyme notebook. There's a line in the song where Big Bang Hank says, well, I'm the C-A-S and the O-V-A. Just because that's Grandmaster Caz's rhymes. So that record was made off of a throwaway notebook from Grandmaster Caz. And to this day, if you ask him about it, he might set your ass on fire. There's a million documentaries of Melly Mel like, this record's the biggest piece of shit ever. This bullshit, I don't like that shit. Because there were Kaz's rhymes, and this woman that ain't never been to the Bronx takes these 3 fucking clowns from a pizza shop, a furniture store, and some fucking guy that was driving them around, makes a group out of them, and they become international megastars. Unfucking believable. The beginnings of payola. Not only did they become international superstars, but when they went to Sylvia Robinson to complain about the fact that they're not getting any money, she said, look out my window. That's your Cadillac down there. Money? Bought you a car. You ain't got a license. You complaining to me about money? Introduction to payola. Payola means, I'm not going to pay you in cash. I'm going to give you some shit that'll sedate you enough for you to shut the fuck up while I make the money. That's why they call it a deal. I'll make you a deal. You do this, and I do that, and everybody in the world's going to know who you are. Well, great. I ain't never been nowhere. I ain't never seen shit outside of my neighborhood. You going to put me in all of these households? You telling me my name is going to be in record stores all over the place? I'll do it. And then afterwards, they're like, wait a minute, this is a bad deal. You goddamn right it's a bad deal. It's capitalism 101. Doesn't only go on in the music business. The music business is an imitation of the corporate world as we know it. That's why people are arguing for wages. People are underpaid and overworked. It's the biggest trend since slavery. So, enter commercialism. The rap groups of the day weren't national or international figures. To date, the culture as a whole, including recorded rap, was an obscurity. There were records made prior to this, but they were made on small, independent labels. Enjoy Records, offshoot records of Island, Mercury, Padlock, little tiny labels that were pressing 400, 500 pressings at a time. They barely escaped the region. They didn't get radio play, but inside the community of hip hop, the person that made that record is a fucking megastar. They're the Jay-Z of the day. Grandmaster Caz was fucking Jay-Z in 1980. Can you imagine? Because the culture has not left the boroughs yet, right? That mass production machine didn't push people beyond the 5 boroughs in New York until Sugar Hill Records. So, they make this record with this hodgepodge group of dudes from wherever. Shit sells a zillion copies. They become megastars. They're performing all over the place, making all this money. Meanwhile, the pioneers of the culture are standing back like, who the fuck are these clowns? The next record they put out was a record you already heard. If I can find the damn play button. The second record to come out on Sugar Hill Records is the Funky 4 plus one more. That's the joint. We already played that record. I'm gonna spare you. The point is, you got your 3 guys in this happy-go-lucky group. You got your fat guy, your tall guy, and your cute guy, and they got little goofy dances, and they do their shit, and everybody loves it. But now, not only that, but we also have a group that has a girl in it. That had never been seen. A female rhyming, novelty. Here comes the second group in the Sugar Hill stable. Making records and making history. Grandmaster Flash releases The Adventures of Grandmaster Flash on the Wheels of Steel in 1981. The routine that I showed you in the Wild Style film is the template for Grandmaster Flash's Adventures on the Wheels of Steel, which comes out on Sugar Hill Records in 1981. The third record to come out on Sugar Hill Records. Now, we got a stable. We got Grandmaster Flash and Furious 5. We got the Sugar Hill Gang, we got the Funky 4 plus one more. Each of them represents a different dynamic, and as for the Sugar Hill Gang, they got 5 guys, but the DJ is the leader. Grandmaster Flash's Adventures on the Wheels of Steel is the first rap record that showcases the DJ's cutting and scratching as the lead performer on the record. It exposes the world to scratching because of this guy in the Bronx that does this thing. On February 14th, the Funky 4 plus one more performs on Saturday Night Live and becomes the first rap group ever to perform on national television in the United States of America. And in 1981, the Beastie Boys are formed, consisting of Adam Horowitz, also known as King Ad Rock, Adam Yauch, also known as MCA, God bless the dead, and Michael Diamond, also known as Mike D. Sugar Hill's got something going on now, right? So we got 3 groups: Sugar Hill Gang, Happy Go Lucky, multi-gender group with Funky 4 plus one more, and we released this introductory record of this band called Grandmaster Flash and the Furious 5. So we got happy stuff, we're representing women, and we're representing technique. But none of what we presented so far represents what's going on in the street. The next record that Sugar Hill Records puts out is The Message. Is everybody familiar with The Message? Let's make you more familiar with it now. Everybody here knows what a video is, what a rap video is. Usually when you see a rap video, it's shot on location. There's a stylist. They bring in girls with fat asses, and all of this accoutrement that comes with videos is staged. Not The Message video. This is shot in front of Raheem's grandmother's house. Listen to the lyrics. This ain't made up. This is the Bronx I just explained to you in song form. You're never gonna hear this song the same again.
It's like a jungle sometimes. It makes me wonder how I keep from going under. It's like a jungle.
Everything I unpacked about the Bronx. Listen.
Broken glass everywhere. People on the stage, you know they just don't care. I can't take the smell, can't take the noise. Got no money to move out, I guess I got no choice. Rats in the front room, roaches in the back, junkies in the alley with the baseball bat. I tried to get away, but I couldn't get far, cause a man with the tow truck repossessed my car. Don't push me, cause I'm close to the edge. I'm trying not to lose my head. It's like a jungle sometimes, it makes me wonder how I keep from going under. Standing on the front stoop, hanging out the window, watching all the cars go by, roaring as the breezes blow. A crazy lady living in a bag, eating out of garbage pails, used to be a fag hag, such a dance to tango, skip the life and dango. A zircon princess seemed to lost her senses, down at the peep show, watching all the creeps, so she could tell her stories to the girls back home. She went to the city and got so did it. She had to get a pimp, she couldn't make it on her own. Don't push me, cause I'm close to the
first
edge.
record showcased Flash. Second record showcased Melly Mel. Melly Mel is the storyteller of the group.
It makes me wonder how I keep from going
it's
under.
Not a story, it's the Bronx.
It's like a jungle sometimes. It makes me wonder how I keep from going under.
Now the rest of the world.
My brother's doing fast on my mother's TV. Says she watches too much, it's just not healthy. All my children in the daytime, Dallas at night. Can't even see the game or the Sugar Ray fight. The bill collectors, they ring my phone and scare my wife when I'm not home. Got a bum education, double-digit inflation. Can't take the train to the job, there's a strike at the station. Me on King Kong, standing on my back, can't stop to turn around. Look, my sacroiliac, a mid-range migraine, cancer membrane. Sometimes I think I'm going insane, I swear I might hijack a plane. Don't push me, call, I'm close to the edge. I'm trying not to lose my head. like a jungle sometimes, it makes me wonder how I keep from going under. It's like a jungle sometimes, it makes me wonder how I keep from going under. My son said, Daddy, I don't want to go to school cause the teacher's a jerk. He must think I'm a fool and all the kids smoke reefer. I think it'd be cheaper if I just got a job.
1981 video technology.
Shuffle my feet, wear a shirt and tie and run with the creeps cause it's all about money, ain't a damn thing funny. You got to have a con in this land of milk and honey. They pushed that girl in front of the train, took her to the doctor, sewed her arm on the game. Stabbed that man right in his heart. Gave him a transplant for a brand new start. I can't walk through the park cause it's crazy after dark. Keep my hand on my gun cause they got me on the run. I feel like an outlaw, broke my last glass jaw. Hear them say, you want some more? Living on a seesaw. Don't push me cause I'm close to the edge. I'm trying not to lose my head. Say what? It's like a jungle sometimes. It makes me wonder how I keep from going under. It's like a jungle sometimes. It makes me wonder how I keep from going under.
Street rap is all of a sudden commercial. All of a sudden, people that are scared to go to the Bronx get a taste vicariously. I said earlier, everybody want to be black till it's time to be black. A record like that made kids in the suburbs relate because the suburbs are boring. Need some excitement. And look at these guys. Listen to the way they make their point. You know, I'm not from that, but damn, I can relate. This is the beginnings of the mass appeal of rap music to the world. The next record that comes out on Sugar Hill Records is a group by the name of The Sequence. So you got your happy-go-lucky made-up group, first boy band in hip-hop, for argument's sake. Some dudes from the street, and two of their artists were showcased. A boy group with one girl in it who's a better MC than all of them. And an all-girl group called The Sequence, because everything goes in order. And they made a record called Funk You Up. Introduction of the ladies rap group. First ladies rap group to go commercial. I'm pushing now, my pace is turning up, but now we into the record making game. Now we into the commercialization of this performance-based culture that I just presented to you. I presented the environment it's in, I presented the components of what it's made of, and that it is performance-based, community-based culture that is suddenly being thrust into the commercial spotlight by a record label owner who was a predominant artist in the black community before becoming a label owner. So people are buying the records just because Sylvia Robinson and Joe Robinson put them out, let alone anybody in the boroughs or who's familiar with the lifestyle who can afford $3.99 for a 12-inch single. Here comes the mass marketing machine. 1982. 1 year after The Sequence, Africa Bambaataa and the Soul Sonic Force bring out the seminal classic, Planet Rock. If I can find a goddamn play button. Son of a bitch. I gotta get this part of my game together. I'm sorry. Fuck. There you go. This is the introduction of electro funk, as titled by Africa Bambaataa. It's a combination of up-tempo b-boy breaks with this futuristic disposition with these electronic drum machines that punk rock kids are using all the time because their families can afford to buy them this type of equipment. So this type of toolbox showing up with these poor kids that don't have a machine, this is another revelation in the community. So all these little nuances start to see the fabric or the foundation of how these things come together. This lays the bedrock for regional phenoms like Luke Skywalker. Every Luke Skywalker record is based on a Planet Rock drum program. So booty music, Miami bass music, all of that, bounce music from Louisiana, all started with a Planet Rock drum sequence and machines and tempo. And it was Southern guys' way of tying themselves to this new phenomenon that's making so much money. And this record came out on a label called Tommy Boy. Everybody knows that tune, yeah? Basically. So now you got 6 dynamics going on, right? You got your tough street group. You got a bunch of boys that bring a girl along. You got an all-girl group. You got a boy band. And then you got these fucking ex-gang members wearing fucking pharaoh headdresses and talking all this crazy futuristic peace, love, and having fun shit in videos. And you're like, yo, this is a community of motherfuckers. Like, the whole spectrum is covered. Rap music is now considered viable musical presentation by the recording industry. These records are selling. They are blowing out the door. And the people that support bands and the people that support music that existed as we know it prior, black and white, are like, what is this bullshit? And why is it selling so much? I really can't stand it. But my kids love it. So let me get 4. So you kind of backing your way into supporting something that you wag your finger at because it's coming from these gangs and these kids that come from this poor place that you don't want anything to do with, you being anyone. So, DJing, b-boying, MCing, we touched on graffiti a little bit. Let's sit down on the b-boy thing a little bit. Again, the terms b-boy, breakboy, or b-girl, and breaker were the original terms used to describe the dancers who performed to Herc's breakbeats. DJ Kool Herc has commented that the term breaking was 1970s slang for getting busy. When you hear people use the term, oh, he got busy, that's another phrase coined by a hip-hop pioneer. Get busy. You think busy means you got a lot of shit to do. In hip-hop, it means you're doing a lot of shit with relative ease and fluidity. You're presenting a concoction of movement, a concoction of action that usually you see one piece of that action from one person, another piece of that action from another person, another piece of that action from another person. But a b-boy or a b-girl can tie them all together into this ball of fluidity. Underscoring the fact that hip-hop was founded as a youth movement, b-boys and b-girls are an essential element of the culture. It should be known that for those deeply immersed in hip-hop, the term breakdance may be used to disparage those who dance for personal or commercial success. When you go to an established B-boy or B-girl, and you say, hey man, that was some nice break dancing you did. To them, to people inside the culture, you don't know what the fuck you're talking about. You're an outsider, right? Because again, this is a culture of the have-nots. So when you start coming with the wrong terminology or the square notion of what it is, it's obvious to everyone inside that you're not from here. Doesn't mean you gotta go. Doesn't mean you're pushed away, but you've painted yourself into a box. That's how that works. So it's either an outsider or someone that's using it for personal or commercial success. Here's some more people smarter than me talking about it.
Hip-hop's a culture that's based around DJing, rapping, graffiti, and breakdancing. But it's a way of life. It's a vibe.
It's a similar kind of rush that you have at a party, at a jam in the park, under the stars, going out, sneaking into the yards, the idea of painting your name, and just the attitude that went behind a lot of it. You know, it's basically us against them.
Frosty Freeze, Ken Swift.
Hip-hop was truly a response to these kids being marginalized. This was their way of saying, we are not nobodies, we are somebody. So I'll put a giant burner on a train, and this train's gonna go all over the city. And that to me is what hip-hop is all about. It's really, look at me.
It's a matter of bombing, knowing that I can do it, you know. Every time I get in the train, almost every day I see my name. I say, yeah, you know what, I was there, I bombed it.
Should be cleaned, and the ones that are caught should be cleaned. They should clean it, the ones that they catch. I'm doing that.
Gives a terrible impression in the city.
The response that I think a repeater, three-time repeater should get would be 5 days in jail.
As graffiti artists, we knew that we were like bandits. We were outlaws, the way we can steal into the subway system, do incredible works of art, and get out unscathed.
Is that an art form? I don't know. I'm not an art critic. But I can sure as hell tell you that that's a crime.
What'd you do last night? We did 2 whole cars. It was me, Dez, and me 3, right? And on the first car, in small letters, it said, all you see is, and then, you know, big black silver letters, it said, crime in the city.
The South Bronx that I knew was a very dangerous place. You know what I'm saying? I mean, if you was in a certain gang or you hung out on the wrong street corner, I mean, anything could happen, you know what I'm saying?
Gang culture was strong in New York. It was violent and it was dangerous.
I got into street gangs, the Black Spades, a lot of other groups I was in before I became a Spade, Our Bronx, Savage No Man.
Africa Bambaataa, who was a gangster, might have been the first to realize how foolish it was to continue in this way.
Africa Bambaataa is an MC, he is a DJ, he is a graph writer, he is a b-boy. But Africa Bambaataa back in the days introduced the concept of peace, love, unity, and having fun.
He pretty consciously tried to redirect the energy that had gone into gangsterism into hip-hop.
The Zulu Nation was an organization that Bambaataa put together whose purpose was to put on these parties.
So instead of fighting each other with, guns and knives and fists, your crew would battle this other crew, but you would do it with records, and you would do it on the mic, and you would do it by dancing.
When the breakbeat part of the record came on, guys would just drop to the floor and start doing these crazy moves. And it would almost seem like a fight had broken out. So people would gather around like they were watching a fight.
Who won the rocking contest? Spinning. The Dynamic Rockets. Hold it down. It was a tie. It was a tie.
Hip-hop has always been competitive, and it's always been about a battle. Whether you talk about graffiti, or you talk about b-boying or breakdancing, or you talk about rapping, or you talk about MCing, it's always, I'm better than you.
Well, I'm the R, Ruby D, and you got a lot of nerve. When you play against me, you know you're gonna get served.
Go crush, JDL, the Lords of Lords, and Ruby D, my man, your shit is on the boards.
I never heard 4 and 5 MCs with 2 DJs battling each other for supremacy. I was like, oh my God, what's going on here?
Well, I'm the M. Like all the pretty girls, I serve your monkey ass like Earl the Pearl.
Go crack, I'm not the Cash or GMC. I'm gonna stick it on the board, man, can't you see?
Kool Herc was the whole manifestation of what hip-hop was about. It changed my life.
Ashes to ashes and dust to dust. We are the brothers, don't ask for Kool Herc. Not 1, not 2, not 3, but 4. We keep your arms in the air, you be on the floor. Guaranteed to give you what you paid your money for, but the Kool Herc brothers got pride.
Just watching entertainers, period. You know how they deal with the audience and crowd. I learned a lot, just absorbed it all, and then hip hop was my release for it.
I slipped away to make a phone call this every day. It was a move I regret, but it didn't know then, so I called me back.
It wasn't about the show and be happy. It was about making the dark, rough, violent, smoked out, reefer selling, gun selling party, making that feeling. But I never heard nothing like this before.
Oh yeah. You'd have done the same thing if you was in my place. You would even stand my life. Believe me, friend, you'll never see me around your door again.
Early hip-hop was a machine. It required DJs, it required dancers, it required rappers. When Sylvia Robinson went out and took the Sugar Hill Gang, which was really a Spice Girl rap group, a group that was made up of non-rappers, and said you can make a record of this stuff, kids weren't thinking about that. This was just something to have fun.
Rap on record was completely revolutionary, and it was something that had never really occurred to the folks who'd been in the game as rappers prior to that moment. It took Sylvia Robinson, who was an older woman and an entrepreneur and an artist in the rock and roll era, to make it happen.
I never knew anything about rap at that time, but my niece was giving a birthday party for me, and I saw this DJ playing music, and he was saying things to the kids, and they would answer him back. And I said, oh my God, that's a great idea. And I felt a spirit in me that said, you put a concept like that on record, and you go to the moon.
What she did was very, very ballsy. Not only did she conceive of making a rap record, but she also assembled her own rap group.
Just like I put the Moments together in the 70s, I put the Sugar Hill Gang together. Big Bad Hank, he was working at the pizza parlor.
Hank closed up the pizza shop and jumped in Miss Rob's car and started auditioning right there with flour all over him and everything. And then Master G was walking down the street. G gets in the car and starts auditioning.
In fact, they had their own names like Master G, Wonder Mike, but they didn't know each other.
She was, gracious enough to say, okay, let me hear what you got. And I said, the hip, hop, the hip. And she said, what? And I started incorporating everything I saw, from the dog to the statue to the library books. And she said that was pretty cool, so that was kind of like the opening hook.
I said the hip, the hip, hop, you don't stop the rockin' to the bang, man. They say up, jump the boogie to the rhythm of the boogie to beat.
I knew all crews, what they were doing, when they were doing it, and where they were doing it. But strangely enough, in 79, there was this record to the hip-hop, the hibbity-bee. I'm like, oh, hold up. Who are these people?
Sylvia just got 3 people that she could mold together. Predates the boy band thing. Let me find 3 people that I can put together and start a group.
There was no Sugar Hill Gang. They had no history. They seemed like interlopers.
One person I know to be a bouncer, and some of the rhymes that he was saying, I heard from Cold Crush, Grandmaster Caz.
At the time, Rappers Delight came out, a lot of hip-hop people were pretty salty about it because, these guys weren't really a hip-hop group and the rhymes came from Grandmaster Caz, and it was phony in a sense.
So there's some people way smarter than me backing up everything I just said. And we've now entered the commercial phase of the culture. These are the baby steps that have created the space that we all occupy now as hip-hop fans, as DJs, as music producers, as MCs, and as students of culture that would come to a place like this. And unfortunately, due to time, we have to open the floor to questions now. So, thank you guys. So do we have a mic? So, I'm nobody's expert. I don't have all the answers, but I am 49 years old. I was born in 1969, and I've been living what I'm unpacking for you my entire life. So it's really important to me to be able to come to places like this and kind of unpack the insides, some of the insides of this story for people who love it, but might not necessarily have the history or have the opportunity to study it at any kind of depth. And if anybody has any questions or thoughts to share, I would love to do my best to answer. Yes, sir.
Is RichMedina your government name?
Yes, it is. Richard Medina is the name my mama gave me. What a blessing. That's why I don't have a DJ name. I was blessed with a last name that rolls off the tongue. Yes, sir.
Yes, I went to your first lecture. Really liked it. This one was also good, kind of similar. I'm just wondering when will be the sequence of your talk.
Okay, so this whole relationship came about through my relationship with Jesse and some guys here in Groningen that do a party called The Loft here at Vera. And we hung out for a couple days and we got a chance to hang out. I started telling Jesse about my education efforts. I teach at Cornell University. I teach at Lincoln University. I teach at the Barnes Foundation. And over the course of the last year and a half, I've had the opportunity to develop a relationship with Nina and the University of Groningen and John Agassilis and the Amsterdam Academy for Theater and Dance. So all of this is the baby steps of an effort to bring this to curriculum. Right now it's elective. This is just people who are interested and who want to spend their time and energy to be here. But as of our gentleman's agreement right now, when I have feet on the ground in Europe, we're going to do a lecture. So, I repeated a nice chunk of the first lecture just to really drive the point home. Obviously, there's an ocean more history to get into. And as long as you guys want it and are willing to have me, I'm going to come here and give everything I got to try to represent the culture as best I can in an academic format. So I pray that this continues and we can laugh about this when we're at part 15 or when the university gives me a job. I'm not one to gossip though, so you didn't hear that from me. You gotta take that up with the people with power, but that's my desire. I wanna get down with y'all every time I'm here and work on my teaching game and work on your information game about this culture if you're interested in it. And this is activism. Sometimes for black folks, activism is standing out in front of police and guns and negative things, but for me, is coming to places where it's not necessarily from my culture, but people want to understand where I'm from and what I do, and they have a vested interest in what I take extremely seriously as my lifestyle. This is not for fun for me. This is who I am. So I'll do this every time you guys allow me. Yes, sir.
I'm curious, how would you, first of all, what artists currently do you like personally? And in what way would an artist in 2019 pay homage to what's been before?
21st century artists that I love, Kendrick Lamar. I mean, obviously all the staple golden era artists that are still alive and making incredible music. I'm not necessarily for all the sing-songy stuff, but Drake is extremely talented. You know, there's room for everybody. You know, style is what this culture is all about. But again, what I'm talking to you about is the birth of culture. What you're asking me about is commercial rap. They're two different animals. I get your point, but for the room, I have to, as an educator, I have to illustrate the line. I'm not judging your question as much as I'm trying to draw the line. What can you do? Man, it's like any other craft, man. Practice, 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 practice. Be humble, be polite. Everybody you see on the way up, you're gonna see on the way down. The person you shit on the way up is the person that's gonna leave you in the dirt when you got problems. You gotta outwork everybody. You gotta study. You gotta sing scales. You gotta put your hands on your machines and put the work in. As for how to maneuver through the record-making machine, I'm not necessarily part and parcel of the recording industry. I represent the performance side of the culture. I'm a blue-collar disc jockey that happens to have worked my way into an international career. I'm not out here because I have these label affiliations or you know what I'm saying? So that's why I draw the line, because for me, I still consider myself underground. There are people who think I'm a star, but the more I keep my mindset in the underground mindset, it keeps me hungry. It makes me have butterflies before things like this. I don't come up here and think that I got all the answers and I just know it. So it's about, you know, really being engaged. If you're doing it for popularity or money, get the fuck out now. You know, because just like sports, there's only so many Messis out there. There's only so many Kobe Bryants out there. You know, there's only so many whatever. And, you know, those are people where God-given talent meets hard work, meets being in the right place at the right time. And then there's regular people like us that are just out here pounding away, trying to find a way for ourselves, you know? So you got to keep the powers in you and surround yourself by people who are smarter than you. Keep people around you that are going to tell you, no, fuck you, that's whack. Because the minute you get yes men around you blowing sunshine up your ass all the time, it's over. Yes, sir. I got on, so the question was, how did I get on Master of the Mix? Is anyone familiar with that? Master of the Mix was a reality TV show that came out in 2010, and it was about DJs. My name was on a list of people that got called. I think there were 30 people. My name happened to be on the list. I happened to be free. I felt like, what a blessing, you know? I'm not interested in commercial acclaim, but if I go from being an underground darling to just being on TV, I'm in 90 million households all of a sudden as an artist, who wouldn't chase that? And when the show was being presented, we thought it was gonna be like Top Chef, you know? Oh, you're a chef? Okay, here's an egg, a piece of celery and some salt. Make breakfast, lunch, and dinner. You got 10 minutes. You know, like they're gonna give me a broken turntable, you know, some fucking wire to solder together and a CD player. And do me a mix, do me a 30-minute mix, you know? So it was like we thought it was gonna be a skills challenge. But at the end of the day, it was reality TV, and we were just musical components of a very long liquor ad. But I can say being in front of a TV camera, having producers walking around you, they don't give a shit about music. They just care about their camera angles and whether their ideas get applied to the production. It did a lot for my ability to concentrate. It did a lot for my ability to flourish under pressure. So I'm really, really, really thankful for that opportunity. It was beautiful. Yes, sir.
Thank you very much for a great lecture. I just want to make sure that everybody here knows that if they want to devote their lives to the study of popular music in Groningen, we have a program called Arts, Culture, and Media, where you do a lot of the kind of work that you're doing, devoting yourself academically to the history of popular music.
Where you from, bro?
And the question that I have for you is, I worry sometimes when we teach the history of hip-hop without mentioning disco. Because it's a lot of times outsiders sort of consuming hip-hop are consuming certain kinds of masculinities. I think we have a very male-dominated room today. I think a lot of maybe some of the comments we've had today were sort of dismissive of things that are tied to sort of homosexual cultures. Could you tell us a little bit about the connections between hip-hop
Beautiful
and
point.
disco?
But first, you got to tell me where you're from.
I'm Canadian.
Oh. I knew that wasn't a Dutch twang. Well said. Fantastic point. So you're 100% spot on. To dismiss disco culture, to dismiss Kilimanjaros and Studio 54 and the Gallery and David Mancuso and Pete DJ Jones and Nicky Ciano and all the people that created downtown New York club culture, it was actually the gay club community that welcomed Africa Bambaataa and all the Bronx artists that were discovered by Martha Cooper, Henry Chalfant, Charlie Ahern, all the downtown Andy Warhol, all the Debbie Harry, all the white folks, considering your question, this is not a race card point, but to illustrate your point in full, you're talking about brown culture in a poor place in the top of the city, in the poorest area of the city. And downtown disco culture is gay, fueled with cocaine, which now we really frown upon in a particular way, but it was a luxury presentation of having arrived in the 70s. And outside of places like Studio 54, there was an ocean of clubs that began to welcome the hip-hop community down, whether it was the dancers, whether it was the graffiti writers, whether it was the MCs or the DJs, or a combination of all of them. Without downtown New York disco culture, the mass appeal beyond the record making doesn't exist. You're 100% correct. And it's also a shining example of the community-based dynamic that the culture represented before it came downtown, as well as the open-mindedness of the gay community, which in theory in the 21st century would shy away from all of that masculinity and all of that tough, angry energy. But because of the vision and the empathy and the compassion in the gay community, they opened their doors because they could see past the shell, just like any person who's of a homosexual or lesbian nature would hope that heterosexual people that they come across would see past the fact that they like people from the same sex. So and the same thing with punk rock. The punk rock point is a tap into the depths of what you're talking about. So Mel Sharon, Paradise Garage, The Loft, books like Love Will Save the Day, all of those people were the very community that was welcoming to hip hop. The only people that didn't want it downtown were white men in power. And when have white men in power ever wanted brown men to stand in the spotlight and do anything prominent? So without the gay community, to a degree, the mass appeal of hip hop doesn't exist. So you're spot on. And we got to get into part 6, 7, and 8 of this to really drive your point home, because it's an enormous It's just as enormous as Sylvia Robinson opening the door, if not more so, because Sylvia Robinson is one record label, but the gay community and all the clubs in downtown New York that began embracing b-boy and b-girl culture, that began embracing graffiti, they were the people that weren't shunning graffiti on the trains. They were the people that were saying, well, you know, if the city wasn't so fucking broke, they could just clean it. They're gonna do it all over again, but if the city wasn't so broke, or if they weren't misappropriating funds, or there wasn't so much embezzlement going on at the top, then we wouldn't have the problems that we have in our community. The drug addicts downtown would have a needle supply or a clinic to go to, and we would have a place to go get our health checked on a regular basis without being scorned. So the gay community represents a respect for discrimination that is just as strong as Black Americans' respect for discrimination, or any people who have been colonized or marginalized by white men in power. So you're 100% spot on with your point, and thanks for bringing that up.
Yeah. That's a great question to end this night with. Thank you all for coming. We have a...
Oh, man.
Yeah.
Wow. Wow.
That's it.
Thank you, guys. We